Hello, ladies. How are you today? Hope I don't have food in my teeth. I just ate something. Uh, I came today to talk about Sophia. Sophia is wisdom. That's the name for wisdom. The scriptures talk about how you should make wisdom your wife. Um, in the realm of the spirit, wisdom is a wife to everybody that is married to wisdom, who takes wisdom and use wisdom to grow and use wisdom to live and use wisdom according to the word of God. So this is basically to people who believe in the sovereign God, the Most High God, and are worshiping Him and are desiring to get a closer walk with understanding, with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I want to talk about staying too long. Yeah, I know that sounds weird, staying too long. What kind of thing could she be saying about staying too long? Well, there are traumas that happen in this world to people. And one of the traumas could be like a car accident that somebody has, okay? When somebody has a car accident, the main thing that happens is once the car crashes, there's usually an injury. When that injury takes place, the people are then either rushed to the hospital or fixed up so that they can be okay. When you have an injury that's very serious, you wind up in the hospital and you wind up in the critical care unit if it's that desperate, or in the emergency room or something to be taken care of. Because the hope is that they can get you back as far as they can to the place of where you came from in that situation. But I want to talk to you about staying too long. There are some people who choose to stay too long. And what do I mean about that? Well, you can go into the critical care unit and you can have had a back injury and you can't walk. And while you're sitting there and you can't walk, you might have decided, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start all over again and I'm going to make it. I'm going to get back on my feet. Some people do. They make it up in their mind that whatever they have to do, they want to get back on their feet. So everything the therapist is telling them to do, they're doing. Everything the doctor is telling them to do, they're doing. They're taking their medicine, they're taking their therapies, they're doing everything they're being told to do. But then there are some people, when they're in the critical care unit, make up their mind as soon as they're alert, oh, it's all over. I'm here. And so when it's time for the therapy, they don't really want to do the therapy because they figure, oh, it's not going to help anyway. When it comes to taking the medicine, they barely take the medicine because they say, I feel groggy, I feel sleepy, I don't want the medicine. When it comes to taking the steps to nourish themselves properly to get better, they might not even want to take the steps to nourish themselves properly. What this then causes is that they are staying in that situation longer than necessary. So, what I want to talk about is staying in traumas longer than is necessary. There are many kinds of traumas that could take place in life that people could have. Some traumas are, let's see, okay, maybe somebody almost drowned. And because they almost drowned, they may have to come back as far as the lack of oxygen for a while. Some people have, and they have things they have to do and go through to build back up again. Sometimes in traumas, people never come back to where they were. Going to the next thing. Sometimes traumas are abuse. It could be a boyfriend, girlfriend abuse, spousal abuse, or something like that, but it can cause a trauma. Sometimes a trauma can be an accident, like I said earlier. Sometimes a trauma can be mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. Okay. When these things take place, the choice then becomes ours. If we are going to stay in that thing longer than we have to, or if we're going to move forward and get better. Now, the reason that I brought up this staying longer than you have to thing is this. Some traumas can be healed immediately or within a certain amount of time, a fixed amount of time. But there are some traumas that become more of a trauma because you stayed there too long. I can give a very, very good example. A woman can date somebody and say, oh, this is the most wonderful person in the world. This is the most wonderful person in the world. I really love this person. This is the best person for me. And then notice some things about him later on that kind of make her wonder if he might be as good as she thinks he is. But then she decides in herself, you know what, we're planning the wedding, we're going to get married, this, that, and the other, and I don't want to back out now that I've come so very far. And what happens is they make the choice to stay. Now, maybe they've been slapped a few times, maybe they've been cursed at a few times, maybe they've been mistreated a few times, and they just figure, okay, once we get married, it'll be all over. So they walk down the aisle, they get married and everything, and it increases. Maybe this is a slap, maybe this is a punch, maybe this is a very, very violent verbal words, maybe it's emotional trauma that comes through this. And each time they are saying to themselves, at first, well, I don't deserve this. I'm too good for this. Why am I putting myself through this? I should leave. Well, all of that sounds fine and good. But the problem then becomes this. If you don't leave, what happens? Well, I think it's very, very clear to most of us, if not all of us, what happens when you don't leave early. What happens is that it may have just been physical. It may have just been emotional. It may have just been mental. But what happens is the degree to which it's physical, emotional, and mental begins to be the challenge. When you stay too long, your mental capacity to take what's not normal becomes challenged. And your mind says to you, well, this isn't right. I should go. But after a while, your mind starts to say, I don't like it, but if I stay around long enough, it'll stop. I don't like it, but if maybe it's my fault. It's not fair, it's not right, but if I could just do better, if I could just be better, then it'll stop. Things will get better. It'll be nice one day. But that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Now, we have in this world had miracles to happen. Miracles have. But the majority of the time, it doesn't happen like that. What usually happens is that it gets worse over time. When it gets worse over time, what the woman begins to say to herself is, I must have did something to deserve it. You are in a lot of trouble when you get to, I must have did something to deserve it. Because now your mind is not just challenged. Your mind is accepting. Now your emotions are not just challenged. Your emotions is accepting. Now your will is not just challenged. Your will is accepting. Sometimes we say, if we fuss about it, if we voice our opinion, if we tell our part, if we do something, it's enough, but it's not. It's not. You get to the point where, you have another black eye. You have a bruise. You have a broken arm or a broken leg. You have emotional problems. You can't seem to pull yourself together. And what happens is that in the midst of all of this, you stop pulling yourself together. You get lost amidst the chaos, amidst the tragic situation, amidst the circumstance, and you can't find a route with which to pull yourself together. When this starts happening, it's as if somebody had took 3 strings, and those 3 strings you needed to pull so that you can stay in control, so that you wouldn't lose your strength. But the strings unravel, and you go to 2 strings, and then you go to 1 string that's stretched. Anything stretched too long, too far will break. And this is what occurs. Eventually, you can break. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not any way to fix what's broken, but it does mean that it's past just going to an emergency room to find out you're sick. It's past just being put in the bed in one of the rooms for them to check on you and do a bunch of tests. It's past just having a test done and finding out what the issue is. It's past being relocated into the hospital, and it's past winding up in the critical care unit. That's staying too long. Staying too long means that you've gotten so much abuse till you start to abuse yourself. Well, ladies, it can happen. It can happen. Let me tell you how you abuse yourself. Somebody offers help and you don't take it. Let me tell you how you can abuse yourself. You can take help that you know ain't really good for you. Let me tell you how you abuse yourself. You constantly tell yourself that it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. And you start making decisions in your mind that, okay, it could be worse. I could be in a shelter. I could be in this situation or that situation. Those things look so horrible to me. I never want to end up in those situations. But you're in something worse than those situations. Because if you can't take being able to go lay your head down in peace, waking up in peace, maybe you're not where you want to be. Maybe you're not eating what you want to eat. Maybe things ain't happening the way you want them to happen. But it beats the black eyes. It beats the pain. It beats the being hit upside the head. It beats the being traumatized. It beats the drama. It beats the crying in the night. It beats the things that you have to suffer. Listen, none of us should voluntarily want to go to the critical care unit. And none of us should voluntarily want to be hearing that you only have so long to live. Let's talk about what that looks like. That looks like a person that accepts it. That looks like a person that enjoys it. That looks like a person that, and when I say enjoys it, it means that people are so used to it till they'll irritate to have it happen. How do they irritate? You have some men that when they get drunk, they'll lash out at the wife, and the wife will be standing right there because they know they get ready to lash out. They know they get ready to be drunk, and they'll just be sitting right there for it. Your best bet is, they drinking, they're gonna get drunk. Rather than leave to go to another room, rather than leave to go to another house, you're staying there for it, and you know what's gonna happen. That's like agreeing with it in a way because you're not trying to get away. The whole thing of being uncomfortable, trying to get away is going to make you uncomfortable. It really is. You're going to be so uncomfortable it ain't funny because most of the time you've built something with that person. You've built maybe a home or a relationship or friendship at one point, and you're not knowing what the future is going to hold, if you're ever going to be happy. You're not happy now, but you don't know if you're ever going to be happy. So what I want to share with you is this. Look at my eyes. You see the dark around my eyes? Can you see it good? That's from not sleeping. I stayed too long. My hair on the edges is pretty much gone from nerves. I stayed too long. I spend a lot of time talking to myself because I stayed too long. I have I used to have such bad, fearful nightmares because I stayed too long. I used to be scared to go to sleep at night because I stayed too long. I would cry out the blue for nothing. People could be laughing, and I would just, tears would start dropping because I stayed too long. I lost my self-esteem because I stayed too long. I was shaking, literally shaking, just being around people, not knowing how, if I was communicating right, if I was communicating properly, because I stayed too long. I had PTSD because I stayed too long. I would ride around in cars, and if it took people too long to get me to the place I was trying to get to, I would literally start crying because I stayed too long. I was in such bad pain, I would sit up at night and just cry. And they couldn't find out why that pain was like it was in my clavicle at the hospital because I stayed too long. I developed gallstones that turned into a rock because I stayed too long. Something was done to cause me not to be able to get enough oxygen by this person. And I suffered from that because I stayed too long. I almost died by fire because I stayed too long. I was given food that I don't think was good for me because I stayed too long. I was subjected to losing a whole lot of things that I had because I stayed too long. I was subjected to having my education interfered with because I stayed too long. I was subjected to certain chemicals because I stayed too long. I was always fearful because I stayed too long. I would holler, fuss to try to prove my point that what was being done to me was wrong, but that was because I stayed too long. And that is the same thing that I go through today, because when I'm talking or I'm rehearsing things that I want to say or things that I feel or things that I want to express, a lot of times I would get loud because I got used to it when I stayed too long. I had a lot of sadness, had a lot of doubt, had a lot of fear because I stayed too long. I tried to take my own life because I stayed too long. I lost me because I stayed too long. I still am learning who I am now after being gone for 6 years because I stayed too long. I'm telling you something because what I want you to understand is that you have every right when you are in a happy state to remain there. And when something wants to take that from you, don't stay too long.